trees are one thing we can all agree on. Fires and natural disasters devastate our forests. The time to act is now. Visit arborday.org and see how you can help.
Hey, I'm Keith Spiro from NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. My guest this week on Let's Talk is comic and comedy producer Matt Owens. Matt, are you a funny guy? Are you more funny when you're working as a comic or when you're like directing a show?
As a comic, I'm more funny.
Excellent. All right. Well, we'll hear all the secrets of the comedy world this week on Let's Talk.
We're local and educational. You're watching WLAE-TV, celebrating 40 years of New Orleans public television.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villeries Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villeries provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villeries Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Dave Miette Insurance Agency. Auto, home, flood, business, 504-556-0809. Dave Miette, INSagency.com.
C&C Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, C&C provides patient-centered care for your entire family. C&C Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we're only covering one team today. We normally cover all the home teams, only one team, the New Orleans Saints, as they get ready for their season, breaking it down for us. He does an incredible job. Ross Jackson, Locked on Saints podcast, part of Channel 4's group that puts out great sports content. He's on a great website. I mean, he comes on our show every Thursday at 4:35, and I just kind of toss it to Ross and say, okay, Ross, tell everybody what you're involved in. But I will tell you this right now. If you want to keep up with everything that is the New Orleans Saints, you need to be following Ross on social media and checking out everything he's involved in, because the content is incredible. Again, great content for you every single day. And so if you're a Saints fan, you want to keep up what's going on with the New Orleans Saints, Ross Jackson's your guy. Ross, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much.
Good
thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that. Glad to be here with you.
Good to have you. Before we get started, again, let the folks know about everything you're involved in, because I'm telling you folks, lock on to my boy Ross here. He's got you covered with everything that's going on with the Saints.
Yeah, for sure. I host the Locked on Saints podcast, which you can find free available on all podcast platforms as well as on YouTube. There's also the Ultimate New Orleans Sports Show. Myself and sports director Doug Mouton, who we've been here on the show together before. We do that show. We finish the show with a cocktail and a last take. It's great. We absolutely love that. That's the Ultimate New Orleans Sports Show, which is on WWL-TV Plus. And you can also find the written work over at LouisianaSports.net, and then you can find everything all in one place on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson NOLA, N-O-L-A.
And one of the most unique things I've ever seen a reporter do, or someone covering the Saints, is the walk to the car, where Ross will leave practice, walk to the car about 5 or so minutes, giving you an update on everything that's going on. For a guy like me that's not at practice getting ready for my show, it's invaluable. For a fan out there that wants to know what's going on, walking to the car is, again, a way you can keep up with what's going on with the Saints. How did you come up with the concept? I mean, how did that happen?
A little bit of it is studying the algorithm and knowing what works, right?
Yeah.
Movement works, all these other things. And also I just wanted to do something that was a little unique and that was quick, that I could get out, right? A lot of the stuff that we do is very produced, takes some time to get going, things like that. And so I wanted to find something that anyone could do,
right,
and then be able to replicate that and be able to put it out pretty quickly. And so that's kind of where the concept came from. And then I went with the walk with the car theme because we live in New Orleans. You don't walk to your car alone. You know what I mean?
That's right.
And so come and walk with me, and then we'll go ahead and I'll get you all the updates that you need.
Again, very creative, and not just that. Again, a lot of great information as well. That's what you get with Ross Jackson. All right, Ross, let's get started. Saints, again, getting ready for their season. One more preseason game to go against Denver on Saturday, and then they'll wrap that up. Based on what you've seen so far, mini camp, also training camp, on the offensive side of the ball, what kind of system is more running, and how does that differ from what we saw from the Peyton and the Kubiak systems in the past?
Yeah, I think you're going to see elements of still both of those Peyton and Kubiak systems, but I think that what Kellen Moore does really well is that he kind of blends everything together so that everything is connected. So that to me is a little bit more Sean Payton-like, right? You're setting up tendencies so you can try to break them later on in the game. Kellen does a little bit of that, but then you're also going to see some of the things that are going to change directionally for the offense. A lot more in-breaking routes, crossing routes over the middle of the field. That's a thing that's going to be a little bit more unique to maybe Kellen Moore's system than what we've seen here in the past. A little bit less running towards outside the tackles in the run game, which was the Kubiak piece to the offense. I think you'll see a lot more kind of in between the tackles, or at least a more balanced approach to where you'll see rushes inside the tackles, outside the tackles, man runs versus zone runs. You'll see a little bit of each one of those. Man runs are more like, if you and I are heads up, we're blocking, you're blocking me, or I'm blocking you, I'm going right at you. But if it's a zone, then I might step to a gap and try to protect that gap and create more opportunities for the running back to be able to read and attack in a couple of different ways. And so you'll see a blend of both of those, as opposed to last year where the Saints ran outside of the tackles over 69% of the time last year, which became a little bit both the identity of the team, but also predictable, right? When you're doing that a lot. And so I think that this brings a little bit more variation.
In the past, we've seen, again, man blocking, zone blocking from this offensive line. What predominantly do you think they'll do this year in terms of the blocking scheme? And again, does it fit this offensive line?
Yeah, I do think that it fits the offensive line. Okay. It's an aggressive offensive line, but it's also an athletic offensive line. And so you want the aggression in those man or gap schemes, kind of interchangeable language there. But then you want the athleticism when it comes to the zone schemes. You also want some athleticism when it comes to the man schemes too, because sometimes you're pulling that guard and you're not having them necessarily block there, but you're having them pull outside the tackle and kind of lead block. And so you want some athleticism, but you also want the aggression there too. So I think about a guy like Trevor Penning, for instance, who made that shift towards the interior, him now being able to be a pulling guard, to be able to kind of lead the way, his ability to be able to utilize his aggression, his ability to be able to utilize his athleticism. I think all of that plays into the strength of Trevor Penning, and I think there's areas of that you can replicate over the course of the rest of the offensive line as well. And so I do think that it fits. As for what I think that we'll see, I have the feeling, based on what we've seen so far, that we'll probably see a little bit more zone run, or at least a little bit more outside than what is typical for Kellen Moore's system. I think part of that, though, is because that's what Alvin Kamara is really, really successful in. And Kellen Moore does a really good job of kind of tinkering and changing and tailoring his offense to fit his personnel.
Yes.
And so I think we'll probably see a little bit more zone, a little bit more outside than we've seen in previous years, but it's definitely going to be balanced more than we've seen in the past.
You've had a chance again at camp to see the installations of the offense, and coaches normally again take a little something from every coach they've worked with. Are you seeing that with Moore's system? And again, can you see some of the other coaches' systems that have kind of been morphed into the Moore system now?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, even down to the way that he utilizes certain things in practice, for instance. I mean, even running, scrimmages and things like that in practice, that kind of comes from McCarthy. Him kind of changing the practice schedule during the day. I know this isn't about the scheme, but just little things too.
Yes.
Changing the practice schedule during the day to where after practices, players get an hour or so or 2 hours to go and rest and recover and do maintenance work and things like that on their bodies. That was something that came from Philly with Sirianni. And so I think that you see that not just in the schemes, which are absolutely there, and I think I'll share some examples about the schemes in a moment, but you also see it from the way that he just kind of creates a process, if you will. And so he really borrows from a lot of different places in terms of where he's been before and coming over. I don't know if he's borrowing much from his Chargers year, but that's okay. I think that what we see from him scheme-wise that maybe comes from all those other places, I think those crossing routes and in-breaking routes, it's so quintessentially Mike McCarthy, right? And so being able to implement some of that, being able to build your identity around your run game, that's something that Mike McCarthy has done before. That's something that Nick Sirianni certainly did, and that they did together last year, which, led them to a Super Bowl. I'm not saying it's going to lead the Saints to a Super Bowl this year, but like that's kind of where I see some of those influences so far.
As far as Kellen Moore being comfortable as a head coach, it seems like, again, just from watching the press conferences, that he seems to be more comfortable almost on a daily basis, to the point now that I've never seen a more relaxed press conference in New Orleans, and maybe you'd have to go to the pre-Peyton years to what you're seeing now. Again, it just seems to be a relaxed atmosphere. He seems to be comfortable in his own skin as well.
Yeah, he's really open to really anything that we want to ask, which is really nice. I mean, there's a lot of us being able to kind of go in there and maybe ask some of the questions that aren't necessarily, I wouldn't call them hard hitting because we haven't gotten into the season yet, but there were questions around the starting quarterback race. There are questions around, how the team is handling things like big bodied wide receivers and handling their injuries and things like that. And he has taken each and every one of those questions. And so I think that there's that part of it, which I think is really great. And I think part of it is just that he's used to, he was a quarterback, right? Like he got the media training. He kind of did all of that kind of stuff when he was at Boise, and he was the winningest quarterback in college football history as well. And so I think he's a little bit more used to it than maybe we gave him credit for coming in. And then, one of the other big kind of concerns or curiosities rather around him when he was hired was whether or not he was going to be able to be that sort of leader of men, right? He's a quiet guy. He kind of keeps himself reserved. But you see the post-game sort of, locker room talks and post-practice talks and how this team has kind of united around him and united around each other. I think what he's done is that he's led with his authenticity, and the players inherently have bought into that. And so I think that there's that piece to the leadership that maybe isn't, out there yelling and screaming and being rah-rah and all these other things, but there's a lot of value in a coach that will just go out there and kind of be himself and expect the players, and expect nothing different from the players, but only for them to be themselves as well.
You talked about him being authentic. Does he work more with today's athlete? Again, you can go back and you can talk about the screaming, howling coaches, the coaches like Sean Payton, who demand discipline, and he's the guy. Everything starts and ends with him. It seems like, again, his approach works more with today's athlete. Yeah. Do you find that to be true? Because you've been there, you've seen him since day one, from mini camp all the way through the practices at training camp.
I think that's absolutely true. And I think part of that is that, he's not far away from being a modern athlete himself.
That's right. Great point.
He was in the league not that long ago as a player. In fact, there was La'el Collins, before he re-signed with the Dallas Cowboys, he was talking about how he was having conversations with Kellen Moore because he was on the scout team that Kellen Moore was the scout team of as a quarterback, with the Dallas Cowboys. Yeah. And so, a lot of that stuff, I think, really kind of goes to show a little bit of exactly what you're talking about, his ability to connect with this generation of player. He himself is a millennial, and you can tell that he kind of operates that way, to where he can make the tough decisions and he can say, I am the person that it ends and begins with, but what's your input? What do you have to say? I'm going to make the final choice, but I want to hear what you have to say. Kind of feels like a little bit of the way that he operates.
And much different than what we've seen, I would say, again, in the Peyton era, even again what we've seen with Dennis Allen as well. Let's talk again about the big storyline during this camp, which is QB1. Who will be QB1? As of the taping of our program today, we do not know who QB1 is going to be. We believe it'll be out of Rattler and Shug. Who do you believe right now has the edge, and if so, why?
Yeah, I think right now Spencer Rattler has the edge, just because, I think both of these quarterbacks are really talented. And Tyler Shough coming in as a rookie and keeping the quarterback competition this close to the point where they haven't announced anything going into the third preseason game, that's a testament to how hard he's working and what it is that he's doing well, Tyler Shough is. But I think that the separating factor is who's got NFL experience. Right. And that's Spencer Rattler. He's the only one outside of Jake Haener who has a game, who has a start. And he's the only one in that locker room that has multiple pro starts at this point. Now, he was 0-6 in those starts, I understand, but that's still valuable. And him being more adjusted to the NFL speed, having the opportunity to use a second year to be able to kind of work on the things that he wanted to work on, as opposed to training for the combine, which is what a lot of these guys have to spend their offseason doing as a rookie. I think that gives him a little bit of an edge. But I think that gives him an edge when you talk about both of them as they are right now. I don't know, though, if that edge is enough to overtake Tyler Shough's the investment in Tyler Shuck
Right.
and the potential behind Tyler Shuck too. Like, there's not one of these quarterbacks that is underperformed by any stretch of the imagination. It's just that they're tight, they're close, and so we'll see where things go. I think if the Saints wanted to make sure that Tyler Shuck was as ready as possible first before putting him out on the field, that's starting Spencer Rattler week 1 makes a lot of sense. Let him have 4, 5, 6 games, and if you're not hovering around 500, then once you feel like Tyler Shuck is ready, you can put him in. But I also see a value in saying, you know what, Tyler Shuck's the guy, and that's who they're going to put their full force behind, and then just rolling with him right off the bat. So we'll see which way they go. But I would say Spencer Rattler's the guy with an edge.
Couple questions here. Okay. He's going to base this off again, obviously, mini camp, training camp, again, the scrimmages and the games. Throughout that, most people think that it's a very, very close race. Do you concur? And if you do, is it just a bit of an edge with Spencer Rattler, or again, are you seeing a gap?
Yeah, I think if you incorporate everything, including training camp and the preseason and all that, I would. That is what makes me say Spencer Rattler has a little bit of an edge.
Okay.
If you wanted to go by just the preseason games, it's really, really tight. I mean, Spencer Rattler's 25 of 35, Tyler Shuck's 24 of 34. Spencer Rattler's got 252 passing yards. Tyler Shuck's got 231. They each threw a touchdown. They each threw an interception. One averages like 7.2 yards per play. The other one averages 6.8. Their passer ratings are virtually the same.
Yes.
Like, everything is almost the same with these guys. And really all that it's been is who comes in second has had the stronger opportunity so far. And so I think that's where maybe this third preseason game can be the biggest decider, because it gives Tyler Shuck an opportunity to either close that gap when you incorporate training camp, or it gives Spencer Rattler an opportunity to widen that gap when you include training camp. I think training camp is where the edge exists right now, and in that final preseason game might be the opportunity for one of those guys to separate.
If it is Rattler QB1 to start the season, and most people believe, again, the first quarter of the season is really a tough stretch for the Saints, and maybe you go with the more experienced quarterback, how do you keep Tyler Shuck involved when, again, we know during the regular season the starter gets the majority of the snaps? How is he going to continue to be able to, ascend within this offense and be ready to go if necessary, whether that be, again, injury or, again, if Rattler ultimately, again, isn't playing well?
Yeah, I'd certainly say that probably one of the best ways to go about it would be maybe to let Tyler Shuck lead the scout team so that you're seeing a lot of things from him. That's what got Spencer Rattler the job last year when he had to go in place of Derek Carr, excuse me. And it was Spencer Rattler leading the scout team that made him stand out to the coaching staff. And so I think you give Tyler Shuck those opportunities. And in that way you maximize his reps without taking any reps away from Spencer Rattler. And then I'm sure you can sneak him reps every now and then where it's appropriate or where you can. But I think maybe that's the way to do it, is that you find a way to make sure that Tyler Shuck is getting the additional work, but also let him lead the scout team and everything. Let Jake Haener focus on being sort of the immediate backup in terms of the QB. I don't want to say the QB2, but the guy that when Spencer Rattler comes off the field, that Jake Haener's the guy he goes to and says, what did you see? You know what I mean? And kind of have those conversations. Jake Haener's incredibly smart. And I think that he makes your quarterback room better from that perspective. And so let him be that guy, and then let Tyler Shuck lead the scout team so that he gets his reps. And then once Tyler Shuck's ready, then you can reconfigure however you want. But I think that would give you the best opportunity to kind of keep him going.
Because of Haener's football IQ, does that preclude them from going out and getting a veteran after the final cuts?
Yeah, I would say that it's probably not necessary to go out there and do it. I think if you're trying to win as many games as possible in 2025, go and get a veteran and add that veteran to the list of players that could potentially start for you in 2025 should you need. But as of right now, I think that because of Jake Haener's intelligence and the fact that you have Kellen Moore, who's a former former quarterback as your head coach, Doug Nussmeier, former quarterback as your offensive coordinator, Scott Tolzien, former quarterback as your quarterback's coach, and then Scott Tolzien, and then you've got another Scott Linehan that's also in there that has some experience too. And so I think when you have all of that, then the value of the veteran quarterback is really about what he can do on the field, because what he can do off the field you can replicate elsewhere. Okay.
What about play devil's advocate here? What about, again, the school of thought that most players feel more comfortable going to a fellow player rather than to a coach when they're having issues with either the scheme or, again, not seeing things on the field? What about that?
Yeah, I wonder how much Kellen Moore being 36 years old changes that.
Okay.
And I wonder how much I'm trying to answer by looking at things that maybe could be there, so it's not fully answering the question, but just some possibilities. with Kellen Moore being such a young head coach, maybe that kind of alleviates some of that concern. And everyone's learning something new this year. And I think that's a point, that's a place where maybe you get a little bit of an advantage in that situation. Kellen Moore is learning what it is that he wants to do with these players just as much as the players are learning what it is that Kellen Moore wants them to do. Every one of those quarterbacks is learning Kellen Moore's system. Every one of the coaches is learning what Kellen Moore is doing. So I think that maybe that alleviates some of that concern to where you can feel a little bit more comfortable going to the coach who has made himself so readily available constantly anyway. Plus you have your quarterbacks coach and the offensive coordinator you can always lean on to.
What quarterback gives this team the best chance to win in the regular season, in your opinion?
That's a great question. I think the biggest threat that Spencer Rattler presents beyond what he can do in the passing game is the fact that he has been so comfortable moving the ball with his feet. And so I think that is something that always raises the floor for any quarterback. And I don't just mean fantasy-wise, but I mean all in all. I think that anytime that you have a quarterback that can move, that can get out, that can go and scramble for yards, that can move around and do all those things, that I think that that's the player that maybe gives you the better chance to win in today's NFL. But Tyler Shuck, I think what it is that he can do, I think he's really athletic. And so he would probably be able to do all of those things too, but allows Kellen Moore to maybe have access to a little bit more of his playbook from an RPO play action. I think both these guys kind of do that. So I think it really comes down to who runs the operation the best and who is able to kind of avoid the pre-snap penalties, who is able to diagnose the defense. And again, I think that a lot of those things come down to the guy that's got NFL experience. And so right now I'd say Spencer Rattler, but from a raw physical trait side, Tyler Shuck might be your better threat at the quarterback position because of what he can do downfield and what he would be able to do once he allows his athleticism to be able to set it.
Does the investment of a second-round pick move the needle on getting Shuck in the game and getting him playing?
I don't think specifically the second-round pick does. We see a lot of second-round picks that get selected and sit for a year. Jalen Hurts is a great example of that, right? And so I think we see that a lot. I think, though, that Tyler Shuck being the highest drafted quarterback by this franchise since the 70s, that maybe plays a little bit of a role. And being the first ever second round pick investment at the quarterback position by this team and by this franchise. And so I think that, to me, maybe is the thing that maybe makes a general manager or a front office or something like that say, hey, we'd really like for this guy to get out on the field. And here's the thing. Kind of no matter what happens in 2025, eventually Tyler Shuck is going to see the field. Because you have a really good quarterback draft coming up, we assume, in 2026. And so you need to know everything that there is to know about both of these guys. Because neither of them could be, it's very, very possible that neither of them is the guy in 2026. And we're talking about a quarterback competition for week 1 of 2025, but that doesn't really reflect the entire story, right? So I think that that's because of that, you have to get Tyler Shuck out on the field at some point during this regular season.
And both are one of those guys could be your backup next year based on, again, having to go over the top 5 pick for a quarterback. Let's go to the running back position, which is an interesting position. Obviously, again, Kamara is your starter. You got Miller, Jones Jr., Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Akers, Neal, and Yarns. So Neal coming off that injury, again, got a chance to get on the practice field. Interesting situation with Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Akers because I believe Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a vested veteran. So again, you can keep them, if you cut those guys, you can bring them back week 2 and not have to pay them for the entire season, which again, the Saints have done a lot in the past, which again means that, again, the running back room may look different from, again, cut down day to, again, week 2.
Absolutely.
Who do you think makes the team and why? And again, and then will we see the rest of these players, if they don't make the team, possible practice squad candidates?
Yeah, I think a shoe-in for the practice squad is going to be Marcus Yarns, a guy that they're probably going to try to get back. I've heard that they're pretty high on him. They like what it is that he can do from a versatility standpoint. I don't know that he'll ever see the field in 2025 as he continues to develop coming out of Delaware, but he has a really unique kind of multiple skill set that I know that they like. And so behind Alvin Kamara, I would say that Kendre Miller is a guy that is, I think, proven so far that he should still be on that roster. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a guy that's done that as well. And I think Velus Jones Jr. has stood out quite a bit. An interesting thing about Velus Jones Jr. is that you can keep him and he can cover your running back room, but also give you some depth in your wide receiver room because he's got wide receiver experience as well. And you just don't have another dynamic athlete like him at the running back position. His speed is very noticeable on the field, I'll say. His burst is really, really noticeable. And I think the things that stand out about him, too, are his ability to be able to make tacklers miss. We haven't seen a lot of that in New Orleans lately. We see a lot of running backs that go down on first contact. And so when you have a guy that can evade that first defender and go and pick up some extra yards, I think that becomes really interesting, too. The Devin Neal intrigue is absolutely there. You just have to see it. Now, the Saints did this last year. Mason Tipton, undrafted, came in, impressed a little bit during training camp, or impressed quite a bit during training camp, got hurt, didn't get his opportunities in the preseason, still made the roster.
Right.
Devin Neal is coming in a little bit of a different situation because he hasn't really had that standout performance the way that Mason Tipton had, not in that style, and that's what happens when you're a running back versus a wide receiver in a passing league. But Devin Neal hasn't had that necessarily, and so him getting out on the playing field would be a major benefit for him. So those are the 5 guys that I would say that could make the roster. If one of those veterans doesn't make the roster, the nice thing about a Clyde Edwards-Helaire is that you can cut him without him going to waivers, and then you can sign him to. You can kind of have that conversation with him ahead of time. Hey, we want to get you back on the practice squad. Here's our plan with you in terms of how that 17-game season looks. We want to elevate you, all these other things. So we're gonna move on, but we're gonna bring you back on the practice squad. And so you can kind of have those types of conversations. Cam Akers, I don't see making the roster right now, and I don't know if he comes back on the practice squad. He's a really good pass protector, but he just doesn't seem to have his legs under him in a way that the other guys do so far.
And Clyde Edwards-Helaire can do the same. He can protect the passer.
Yeah, he's a great pass protector, which I think is one of those things that the Saints really need in their backfield, especially when you have a young quarterback. You want that extra protection. But I have also heard, and Diana Rossini reported this as well, but I have also heard that they're making some phone calls to figure out if there's anybody worth pursuing at that position. They've been active in the trade market so far, so maybe there's a chance that they end up taking a swing at a running back at some point.
Okay, let's talk wide receiver, and of course we're going to talk about the newest addition as well. Olavi, Shaheed, Cooks, Tipton, Wilson, Pettis, Austin, and of course, again, they just made a trade for a wide receiver from Denver, Devon Valley. They give up a 4th-round pick in this year's draft and a 7th-round pick in next year's draft. The player, again, is a former 7th-round pick. I have no issue with going out and trying to get a big receiver. He is a big receiver. It's exactly what they're looking for. My issue is don't give up any picks in this year's draft, okay? And that 4th-round pick, I think, is valuable. I obviously didn't have the 7th-round pick because they gave it up for Godchild, and I have no problem with that, giving a 7th-round pick for Devon Godchild because he's your run stuffer. My issue is, again, that seems a little pricey, especially when you look at Michi went for a 7th-round pick, Moore went for a 7th-round pick, Waller went for a 7th-round pick, Pickens was a 3rd-round pick and a future late-round pick to be determined. Belly 6'5", 210. Had 41 receptions, 475 yards, 3 touchdowns, all in the red zone, 3rd among Broncos wide receivers. Your thoughts on the player and your thoughts on the deal?
Yeah, so the player I really like. I like going out there and getting a big 6'5" guy that can go out there, and that is a quintessential chain mover. I mean, Denver quarterbacks last year in the 13 games that he played completed 75.9% of their targets to him, right? And so, or he caught 79% of the targets that went his way. And so he is a really reliable hands guy, a good possession receiver, and somebody that can help you move the chains. He converts first downs at a high rate, and he's consistently getting those fresh opportunities and especially when you have young quarterbacks, having a big target like that can operate in the short and intermediate area, but also has the 4.47 speed so he can get involved in the 3rd level as well. I think all of that brings a lot of value to this team that he didn't have. Like, he can have an impact in a way that no one else that the Saints had in their wide receiver room could have an impact. So I think that that's really valuable. He also got 60% of his contested catches last year, by the way, too, and I think that's a really solid thing, especially when you're dealing with young quarterbacks that are learning what NFL Open is, right? And so giving him those opportunities to go out there and make those contested catches. As for the price, I think a 4th-round pick's a little steep, too. It signals a couple of things. It signals that there was competition for him, I think, in terms of other teams trying to get in, and then your price got negotiated up by somebody else. This happens. And it signals, too, that clearly they really liked him, and they really, really wanted him. Otherwise, once another team comes in and kind of starts negotiating the deal for you, you say, all yours, go for it. We'll go find somebody else. So clearly they had something that they wanted to do and stick with all this. I think one of the things that's most appealing to Kellen Moore when I asked him about Vele and the approach, or rather the pursuit of him on Thursday, is that he highlighted the intelligence. him operating and finding success as a 7th-round rookie in a Sean Payton offense, which we remember the play calls for the Sean Payton offense, right? Lengthy, a lot of detail, and playing in multiple positions as well. And so you got to know not just this play from the X receiver side, but from the slot receiver side and from the Z receiver side. And you have to understand when you are, when you aren't, where you are, when you aren't, where you need to be. And understanding all of that, I think, is a real big value that the Saints probably also placed in him, to where they felt okay moving without. Now, look, over 520 players have been drafted in the 4th round. 90 of them have been Pro Bowlers over the course of the last 10 years, right? So it's 527 picks, I think it was, in the 4th round over the last 10 years. That's 17%. And so your ability to be able to hit there is pretty limited. I think the Saints hit this year twice in the 4th round, Danny Stutzman as well as Quincy Riley. But this was also a draft that was very, very much about the middle of the draft. It was about that area of the draft. And so it makes me wonder whether or not, because I haven't dug into the 2026 draft yet, we still have a football season to play, but the Saints front office has. They've been scouting these guys for years already. And so I wonder if they know that maybe the middle of this draft coming up in 2026 isn't as populated. The Saints over the last 10 drafts, not including last year, so going from 2024 back to 2015, 5 years, they didn't pick in the 4th round. And so they've consistently moved out of this round over and over again. And so they're kind of doing something that's par for the course from the front office perspective.
And for me, again, look, and I understand that there's a possibility of getting a compensatory pick for the Odebo signing with the New York Giants. My issue is, again, this could be a top 5 pick. Anytime you get a top 5 pick in a round, you want to hold on to that. And that to me, again, not that they didn't need the wide receiver, not that I don't like the player.
Right, absolutely.
Okay?
Yeah, it's just again, a steep price.
It's a steep price for a wide receiver. And again, especially knowing that possibly, again, you may be a top 5 pick in next year's draft.
And to that, the compensatory pick thing, that's also, I mean, Isaac Yiadom, it's all up to him, right? If he plays more than, I think it's 35% of snaps, which he's in line to be their starter, he's going to see 35% of those snaps, then they're probably not going to get that 4th round compensatory selection either. So that's that other piece of the trade-off, unlikely to be there pretty quickly.
Well, you gotta hope this guy's going to come in and be a starter for you.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, or you know, a key contributor, things like that, right? You want him to be a guy that's going to be able to be up there. If he can be the 3rd leading receiver again, just like he was over in Dallas or Denver, excuse me, I think that's great, right? Because he's going to have to start slow. They're going to put him in one role week 1, and that's going to grow over the course of the season. And so, by the end of the season, he's got to finish up being a contributor, and he's also got 3 years left on his rookie deal. So you want him to be able to live that out here.
Which is another good. That's a good point for a team that's not in cap hell anymore. But again, it's still on a rookie deal. So that's a great deal there. We're going to come back. We're going to dive a little bit deeper in the wide receiver position. We want to hear from our underwriters. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Ross Jackson, Locked On Saints podcast, is our guest. Quick word from our underwriters. We'll be right back and continue the conversation about the New Orleans Saints. Stay tuned.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Ross Jackson, Locked On Saints podcast. Our guest, Ross, we were talking about the wide receiver position. Veli comes in now from Denver. Olave, Shaheed, Cooks, Tipton, Wilson, Pettis, Austin. Give me the guys that make the final roster in your opinion.
Yeah. So for me, the locks are right at the top there. Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Brandon Cooks, and I think Mason Tipton's there too. I don't think there's a way that you can move on from this guy. He's been so electrifying, and he's also shown that he can do more than just the deep ball, although the deep ball's great, right, in terms of what he can do. And then I think, look, we talked about the price that they paid to get him. Vele's got to make that roster.
Got to.
Right? So he's on the roster. Even if he doesn't play in the final preseason game, he makes the roster. So I think that's 5. I'll be really interested to see if they keep a 6th. And if they did, I would say it's Dante Pettis.
Okay.
And the reason why I think Dante Pettis is because he gives you another one of the guys that has a little bit more size in the rest of the room. He's one of the 6'2" guys, which up until Vele was the tallest that you got in that room. But he also gives you special teams help too. He can return punts, he can return kicks. And I think that that's something that this team is going to value, especially knowing that you have to have 2 returners back there. So you can't just have the one Rashid Shaheed back there like you used to. So you have 2 returners, and you got to have both guys that are going to be able to be impactful.
Yes.
The thing that's really nice about Dante Pettis is that he can block well, and so that works if Rashid Shaheed is returning, but he also has return ability too.
Yeah.
So I think that if they keep a 6th guy, he's the guy that makes the most sense.
You mentioned Jones earlier, again, who can swing between running back and wide
exactly.
receiver.
And he's got return ability too.
Exactly, no doubt. Okay, let's talk tight end, because that's an interesting position for the Saints, and I wonder if they're going to be active again in trying to be able to add another tight end to the mix here. Johnson, Stoll, Jacobson, Welsh, Montevideo, and of course Morrow and Hill, again, probably are starting the season on the PUP list.
Yeah, that seems
so
likely.
How does that shake out, and how many tight ends do you think they keep?
I imagine 3 make the most sense right now, and then you keep one on your practice squad. And so that's, got to be one of these other guys in terms. So my thoughts are, Juwan Johnson, Jack Stoll, they're making the roster.
Right.
Jack Stoll is a phenomenal blocker. He was with Philadelphia last year. He understands and has experience not just with Kellen Moore, but also with run game coordinator TJ Paganetti, who is like the secret sauce to the run game, basically. And so Stoll is going to be a big part of what the run game looks like, but also is really, really physical, both as a blocker, but also after the catch too. So I think that adds some value for you. The 3rd tight end, I'm not sure about. I thought maybe Michael Jacobson would have his opportunity.
Okay.
He looked really good throughout training camp, and for the 3rd year in a row has made a lot of splash plays during training camp, but he's had a quiet preseason. Yeah. And so maybe he's got one more shot to be able to get that done. We'll see. Trayton Welsh, impressed. He's got that former wide receiver, experience in him, and that certainly showed against the Jaguars with that big 28-yard catch on that over route to the right side of the field. And so maybe if he continues to flash like that, then we'll see. I feel like he's kind of leapt Jacobson a little bit in team reps too during practices.
Right.
And then Matavao, I think, is a guy that's a shoe-in for your practice squad.
Okay.
He had one of the tougher routes to the roster, but then when they didn't land Noah Fant, when Morrow didn't come back during the preseason, or during training camp, or preseason, and then we knew that Taysom Hill wasn't going to be back, that kind of opened up the pathway for him, but he just hasn't had the standout nature like a Trayton Welsh or like a Michael Jacobson. So I think that 3rd spot's between Jacobson and Welsh, and then whoever doesn't get it ends up on the practice squad, and Matavao might make his way to the practice squad too.
When expectations on when we'll see Morrow and Taysom back?
I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, but Kellen Moore said something to the effect of those guys are not close to seeing the field.
Okay.
And that was a couple weeks ago. And so at this point with Taysom's injury having happened and requiring surgery, it was like December 13th, I think, and then Morrow's injury happening in the final game of the season where he had to be drug off the field and then also required surgery. Those seem like things that are going to take some time. So I'd probably say my expectation has always kind of been October, November.
Okay.
But we'll see. I mean, look, guys heal faster.
Yeah.
Some guys go quickly from rehabbing to on the field sometimes too. And Morrow is a guy in particular that once he's ready to be on the field, one iota, he's going to make his way out on the football field. Like, you can't keep him off of the field. So I think eventually those guys make it back, but I think the timeline for both of them to be on the field is probably something like October, November.
Taysom's role in a Moore offense?
Read options, RPOs, and the opportunity to be able to run a lot of QB power still. I think that's all those things are still going to be there. I asked Kellen Moore back during minicamp if he still intends to, once Taysom Hill makes his way out on the field, if he still intends to utilize Taysom Hill at the quarterback position, and he quickly said yes. He gave that right away. And so I think that you're going to continue to see that. But I think that what's really exciting is, like, you look at last year, I can't remember the exact number, but it was over 200 RPOs that were called by Philadelphia for Jalen Hurts, and 199 of them were runs. That number I do know for sure. And so they were number one in the NFL in RPO usage. And I think a guy like Taysom Hill just gives you the opportunity to do that even more when you have, when you're swapping him out for a Shuck or a Rattler, whoever's on the field by the time that he ends up making his return. So I think that it's pretty similar to familiar, I think it would be, to what you saw with Sean Payton, but I think maybe more of the RPO game finds its way in for him.
The enigma that is the New Orleans Saints is the offensive line.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Fuaga, Ruiz, McCoy, Pete, Banks look like they'll be the starters when Pete is healthy. Then you got Young. They just brought in Fortner, went through trade. Is it Raduns, Lemieux, Simpkins, who has really shown out. Hergel was a guy last year that everybody thought really played well. Ezra was a former 7th-round pick. Wesley, they brought in Mendoza, and was it Panasuk was the guy they just brought in from the UFL. That's a lot of bodies.
A lot of bodies.
Who makes the team?
Yeah, I think your starting 5, as you mentioned, Banks, Penning, McCoy, Ruiz, and Fuanga. And then for me, what I'm looking at are who are the guys that are the backups that can cover more than one role? This is where Will Clapp, when they first got him, was actually really beneficial for them. But now that he's gone for the season, I think Torricelli Simpkins is one to watch. He performed extremely well at center. I mean, he played 97% of the snaps against the Chargers, and he played all but one drive up against the Jaguars. And so I think he's there. Landon Young is one of the few guys that can be your guard tackle swing. So I think that he is a guy that can make that roster and can be your 6th offensive lineman as well, should you roll those packages out. Then the conversation gets super interesting because they just traded for Luke Fortner, but here's what they did. They swapped a guy that wasn't going to make the roster for them in Colin Saunders for a guy that wasn't going to make the roster in Jacksonville. So there's no pressure to keep Fortner on the roster at this point. So I'm going to hold off on him for a moment. But then I think that the other guys that make a ton of sense are going to be the ones that sort of have that either center guard or guard tackle sort of swing versatility. And so that's the thing that I'm going to be looking for. We thought Saldiveri could potentially be one of those players. He ended up not being able to be one of those players as his season is over. And so I think between Simpkins, Young, maybe Fortner does make the roster, and then I think you're probably looking for one other guy that can stand in there, and I think that's Dylan Radens, who can play guard and tackle. He gives you another one of those swing guys. I'm curious if they keep 9 or 10 to start the season, and then maybe once Penning is healthy, if they swing a guy back over to the practice squad. But I think if they're going with 9, those are the ones that make the most sense. But I'm finding myself very curious in terms of like the Fortner addition, and maybe if he is or is not, or if they stick with a Kyle Hergel that's played center for them and can also play guard. Like there's a few of those guys that can swing positions.
Any chance they're hitting the waiver wire and trying to upgrade that position?
I'm sure, yeah, and I'm sure that they're making phone calls too about potentially, looking to make moves, right? Can we send you a future 6 for a guy that you were going to cut anyway, so we don't have to deal with the waiver wire type situation?
Right, they're 14th if I'm not mistaken on the waiver wire, so they got a ways to go.
Yeah. So that's why a lot of times we're probably one of those other reasons why they make that move for Bailey, right?
Absolutely.
Let me go get a guy that I want where I don't have to deal with the waivers. And so when the positioning is not super strong for you, you try to go and make those moves. But I also think too, there's a chance that you referenced the roster tinkering that happens. That goes for probably the first 3 weeks or so, to where your initial 53 is never your week 1 53, which is never your week 2 53, which is rarely your week 3 53.
Right.
And so I would say too that there are probably some opportunities where players will end up getting cut after roster cuts because teams are moving numbers around on their roster, and then because of that they'll be able to find somebody that they maybe try to bring in at that point.
Let's talk defense now. Defensive line, defensive end, Bullard, Williams, Shepard. Also on the inside, Gotcha, Boyd, Ridgeway, Thomas. Nose tackle, Brazee, Brockton, Peavy. And then, of course, we got the linebackers position, which we'll get in after in just a moment. But just the defensive end, defensive tackle, nose tackle positions. Who do you think makes the team?
Yeah, I think starting with the edge rushers, you're looking at guys like Chase Young, Carl Granderson, Cam Jordan. Those are the easy ones. And then you're looking at, I think, Fadil Diggs and Jasheen Davis, Fadil Diggs and Jasheen Davis have had really strong camps so far. And so those would be 2 players to watch out for. Foskey has not had the training camp and preseason that I thought he would have in this new Braden Staley defense, but I've asked around and they're happy with what they're seeing from him from a development standpoint. It's not the big pass rush flash stuff that's standing out for them. It's the run game, it's the hustle, he makes the tackle on the 3rd and 14 that forces the punt against the Jaguars that leads the game tying touchdown and 2-point conversion. But I don't think he's going to see the field very often either, right? So I think it's easy to say, yeah, we like him, but we're not going to put him on the field, right? So I think there's a lot going on within that edge rusher room that could do that maybe could shift around, but I think those 5 make the most sense. And I would probably take Davis over Foskey right now.
Would Foskey go on a practice squad?
And I think you try to get him to the practice squad, because I don't know how much everybody would be clamoring for him. But look, 2nd-round pass rusher, coming out of Notre Dame all-time sack leader. Teams might be enthralled by that. So it's a little bit of a negotiation to make there for sure. On the interior, I'm looking at guys like, I think your starting interior three are Brian Brzee and Nathan Shepard on the sort of defensive end spots.
Okay.
And then Devon Godshaw at the defensive tackle spot.
Okay.
And then you're probably keeping 2 or 3 more guys behind them. Christian Boyd, to me, is a shoo-in.
Right.
Him in his second year and the development that he's had, him being able to fit into that nose tackle spot makes a lot of sense. Vernon Broughton is probably a shoo-in. That's a 3rd-round pick that they invested, so you're probably keeping him around. And then if they keep another guy, watch out for Jonah Williams. That's another guy that I think has had a pretty successful camp, although it's kind of cooled off here as of late.
What about the disciples of Staley, like Bullard and Williams, those type of guys? Did they have a shot to making the roster?
Yeah, I think so. And I think both of those players are the ones where if they keep somebody outside of those first 5 at the defensive tackle spot, I think both of them have a real shot. I think Williams has had maybe the stronger camp, but I would dare say that Bullard has had the more consistent camp. Like Bullard has been who he has been throughout, but I don't know if his, I think Williams is somebody that can shift and move around a little bit more, maybe, if that becomes a little bit more enticing. So you try to take one roster spot and turn it into 2 where you can, and I think Williams gives you a better opportunity.
What about Rumph?
Rumph is a really good. That's somebody that I forgot to mention. So that would probably be the other guy that I would throw in. My apologies. So the top 3 guys, and then Rumph and Diggs are the ones that I think that make the most sense. Rumph has had a really, really strong camp. He's been somebody that's been a standout before. I'm a little mad at myself for forgetting to mention him, but he to me absolutely makes this roster. And I think too that just his value as a locker room player, and again familiarity with Staley as one of Staley's. I think he was part of his first draft class, if I recall correctly. That there's some real interest there in keeping him around.
Let's talk the linebackers, and again, Werner, Ford, Stallbird, and Powell, and then in the middle, it's Davis, Stutzman, Sewell, Jackson. Some of these guys have been around for a while on this team, and they've been special team, really great special teamers for the Saints. But again, there's a numbers crunch here now.
Right.
So who makes the team?
Yeah, this has been a really good position.
Right.
This has been a really good position all throughout camp. Davison, Werner, and Stutzman are your locks for sure. And then I'm in between on a couple of other guys. Like I think Nephi Sewell's had a really strong camp. I think Jalen Ford's had a really strong camp, particularly towards the end. Like he's the guy that's built maybe the most momentum. But I think you've seen good things too from DeMarco Jackson as well as Isaiah Stallbird.
Right.
And so there are maybe 5 spots at this position. And then maybe other guys go to the practice squad. And so do you try to sneak the veterans into the practice squad? You don't have a lot, right? The veterans are probably your starters, right? Those are your starting guys. And so you got to get other guys through waivers. And so as of right now, just based on also the special teams acumen, I think maybe Jackson and Sewell are best kind of positioned to go in behind those other 3 guys. But I think Jalen Ford could challenge Jackson a little bit. He's been a little bit more of a playmaker in terms of his athleticism, and he can contribute on special teams too. So I'm curious to see which one of those goes through. And I think Stallbird is somebody that they're going to rush to try to get back to the practice squad.
Yeah, I agree with that too. He's really stuck out. Secondary. Yedem, Riley, Beamham at one corner, McKinstry, Payton, Wright at the other corner. Who do you think makes the team there?
Yeah, I think out of those guys, you're looking at McKinstry, you're probably looking at Rico Payton because, again, special teams value.
Yes.
He's been an outstanding gunner opposite JT Gray. I think obviously Yadam's there because he's probably one of your starters.
Right.
And then Quincy Riley. And then I'd probably throw, obviously Alante Taylor is on there too. I know he's at a slightly different position.
Right.
Nickel, you want to come back to that one? So I think those 4 in particular are the ones at the outside boundary corner spots that I think make the roster.
And Nickel, Taylor, Ugo, Price right now. So is it Taylor and Ugo at this point?
That's what I would think. Yeah. And look, Price has had some strong showings.
Yes.
Everything like that, but I think he's had strong enough to be a practice squad guy, not necessarily strong enough to steal a roster spot. But I think Ugo Amadi in particular has been really impressive in that star role as a blitzer and in coverage.
I really like the safety position with again Reed and Blackman as your starters, but also Sanker showed a lot. Burgess is a veteran. Howden is a guy that they drafted. They got JT Gray as your special teams phenom, and of course Davidson is part of that.
Yep.
Who do they keep? Who? Because that's another tough cut there.
Yeah, it's really tough. I think the guys on the outs there are Davison and then Burgess.
Okay.
And not because Burgess is playing poorly, he's just been injured, and so it's tough to keep him around. So then with that, and look, this is a position, by the way, that we were worried about.
Yeah.
Right, going in, especially after the retirement of Tyrann Mathieu, we went, oh no, what are they going to do?
Right.
And so they've done a great job here. But I think it's Justin Reed, I think it's Julian Blackman, Jordan Howden, Jonas Sanker, and then I would throw JT Gray in there as well. And then I think it's the other couple of guys that are kind of on on the outside looking in, but trying to get back to that practice.
I want to talk about the defense. I want you to give an explanation to the audience, okay? Explain the difference between a Staley system and how it differs from the Dennis Allen system that we've seen for so many years here in New Orleans.
Yeah, there's a lot of difference here too. Let's start with the front. So the front seven. What you're going to see are things that look a little bit less like a 4-3 traditionally or a 3-4 traditionally. And you're going to see a lot of things that look more like a 5-2. And so what I mean by that is 3 interior defensive linemen, 2 edge rushers over on the outside, and then 2 middle linebackers that are covering the middle of the field. That's going to kind of be a little bit of the base. Now you have to be able to play a nickel in the NFL. So there are going to be times where either you're down to 1 linebacker and then they're doing what they call sort of these 5-1 penny fronts, or they're going to go into still a 4 down, but you'll still have 2 guys potentially standing up. These edge rushers can choose. They want to put their hand in the ground because they want the get off on the line of scrimmage because they know that the offensive lineman struggles to get off the line of scrimmage quickly, or to stand up so they can see what's happening a little bit more ahead of them, and so they can kind of choose what it is they're going to do. And so in those cases, you're going to see 2 stand-ups or 2 edge rushers and then 2 guys on the interior. That'll look a little bit more familiar with 2 linebackers and 5 DBs. But what's going to be really interesting is sort of these 5-man fronts with 3 guys with their hands in the dirt, 2 stand-up, 1 linebacker, and then 5 defensive backs. That's going to be, I think, a look that we see quite often, particularly on third downs, or excuse me, particularly on passing downs that aren't third down. And then on third down, maybe you see 4 down linemen and then get the extra coverage player out there.
In a Dennis Allen system, the secondary is playing man-to-man. It's so totally different in a Staley system, and explain how.
Yeah, so what they do with what Brandon Staley does as a part of the sort of Vic Fangio coaching tree is that he runs what's called zone match, or sometimes it's called vision match. It's all kind of similar. So it's a little bit more like zone coverage for the eyes. You're playing with vision on the quarterback. You look back at the interception by Jalen Ford up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. That was a vision interception, right? That was watching the quarterback, seeing where he was going, skying up and going to go and get the football. So it opens up the opportunity for a little bit more playmaking in that perspective. But the other part that it does is that it creates a lot of rules for the secondary. Because you're trying to take the best parts of zone coverage and the best parts of man coverage and smush them together and try to get none of the bad, right? You're just trying to get all the best. And so what'll happen is that if you and I are lined up and we're lined up across from 2 wide receivers, we'll have rules, if then, or what they call it. And so if this wide receiver, if the second wide receiver, who's the one on the inside, breaks towards the outside, then that means this. But if the outside receiver or the one breaks inside, that means this. But if he stays straight, that means something different. So based on what patterns are coming off the line of scrimmage by the offense, the defense has rules to try to match that, which sometimes means switching and passing players off to other zones. And at other times it means that, like, if that wide receiver goes vertical, he's yours all the way, right? And you have some safety help over the top, but he's yours all the way. I'm focused on what's happening down here. And so sometimes a zone coverage call will turn into a man coverage call in order to be able to take away the vertical match. This defense, sort of cover 6, you'll hear it called, and then zone match being the scheme, was created to try to take away the vertical routes in the NFL game. When the game became a super big passing league, it was Fangio, Belichick, Saban at the college days that came in and kind of created either, like Saban's is called Rip Liz, Belichick's is a little bit more of a rules concept, zone match with the Fangio side. And so it was all about trying to say, you know what, if those guys are running straight, get out of the zone coverage and just follow them, like go and cover them. And so that's where this comes from.
All right, Saints have been drafting for personnel to play, again, a 4-3. Now, how do they play a 3-4 or a hybrid 3-4 with again the players they have on the roster?
Yeah, so they've done enough, I think, to address the interior. They take a guy like Brian Brzee, instead of sticking him at nose tackle, they move him to a 3-4 defensive end. I think that works well for him. Same thing for Nathan Shepard. That's a position that he's played before. Then they go and they get what they didn't have, which was the starting nose tackle. That's where they went and got Devon Gottschall. And then now Christian Boyd has been able to kind of develop into a role because of that. So I think that's how they take care of that. On the edge side, the thing that's going to be most interesting is you don't just rush in this system. You've got to be able to drop into coverage and just cover the flats. It's not a situation where you're going to be carrying somebody downfield. There are situations where that might be forced, but typically you're just dropping into the flats. And so that's going to be the one thing where maybe Carl Granderson and Chase Young don't really have the fit. But they're such good pass rushers, I don't think Brandon Staley cares. He just, because they're not going to ask you to do that every snap. They just need you to be able to do that every now and then. So I think that that's going to be the big thing there. That's where the biggest question mark still remains. Not a lot changes for guys like Demario Davis and Pete Werner. Some of the communication moves to the safety. It becomes Justin Reed's responsibility.
Right.
I do that all the time.
Yeah, me too.
And I also sometimes call Julian Blackmon Justin Blackmon. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
But those guys, like, that's kind of the biggest change for them, to where maybe they have the green dot and they're making the calls, but the quarterbacking of the defense now happens at the safety spot. And that's not shocking, right? It's Brandon Staley. He's got a safety background. He's got a defensive background. That's how he wants it to be. So that's going to be a little bit of that. The other thing that you're going to see a lot is Justin Reed making decisions for everybody else. Based on what he's seeing and diagnosing from the defense, he might change somebody to blitz. If he's set to blitz, he might decide to drop out based on what he's seeing from the offense. And so it's going to be a little bit of that sort of chess match where he gets to be, and look, he's the NFL player chess champion.
Right.
And so now he gets to play chess on the
There you
field
go.
in that way too. So I think that's maybe where some of the adjustments were made to match this new system, and maybe where some of the inconsistencies are.
You've had a chance to see every practice, the scrimmages, etc. But again, we have not seen this first team defense on the field.
Right.
They haven't taken the field in preseason. A two-part question. First of all, how do we know how good this defense is? And then the second part of it is, how are they ready for the regular season, getting their body physically ready for, again, game time collisions,
Yeah.
the physicality of again, an NFL game without, again, playing in an NFL game.
Right. So I'll give you both answers in two different versions. The first version will be just the honest version. How good is this defense? We don't know. Are they ready? We also don't know.
Okay.
That's just the truth. That's just the truth, right? But let me give you the analyst answer here too. This, to me, is a big part of the reason why as many of those starters need to find game action before week 1 as possible. They need to get those guys out there at some point and give them an opportunity to have a little bit of like a dress rehearsal, if you will. And so I think you've got to be able to get them out there. The good news is that the defense has kind of been the standout side of the football really all throughout camp.
Yeah.
And when you have a lot of guys that individually do things very well, Chase Young rushes the passer, Julian Blackmon's really good in coverage, Justin Reed's a great communicator, so on and so forth, then I think you feel you can individually feel good about the players. But them operating as a unit, they got to do that out on the field.
Yeah.
So the real truth of it all is that we don't know yet.
Yes.
But we'll find out, I think, very quickly, especially the run defense, which is my biggest question mark.
All right, special teams, just quickly, because we only got about 2 minutes left. Is it Groupie or Smith?
Groupie.
Okay.
Yeah, only missed one kick through camp so far.
Is it Kroger or Burnip?
I'm going to go Kroger.
Okay. And again, what is the long snapper? Who's going to be the punt returner? Is it Pettis or Shaheed?
I think you're still going to see Rashid Shaheed doing those. And in long snapper, of course, Zach Wood.
Okay, and then kick returner. What do you think?
I think you're probably going to see Rashid and then either one of Dante Pettis or Velus Jones Jr., depending on the roster.
Realistic record for this team this year, in your opinion?
I've been pretty consistent around 5 wins.
Okay.
I think it's kind of what I'm expecting. If they do more than that, I'll be very surprised. If they do less than that, they're in a good position to keep rebuilding.
And overall quality of depth on this team, in your opinion?
Concerning, yeah, especially the second team defense. Very rare you're going to see them all out on the field at the same time, of course, but I think there's some drop off there, and we haven't seen a lot of promising things from the second team offensive line either. Positions that, again, the fans should be looking at on the waiver wire that they want to upgrade to depth in? Tight end, I would say running back, offensive line, and then maybe digging around a little bit more at edge. I'm not sure if they will, but that would be a spot. But usually not a lot shakes free from the tree there. And then finally, again, just your thoughts on Kellen Moore. Again, how he's handled his first camp, and again, how you think he's been as a rookie head coach. I think Kellen Moore is exactly what this team needed right now. He's such a good community builder. He's such a good team builder, and he does a really good job fostering the football team part of football. Right. And I think that's exactly what this team needs as it kind of goes through this transition. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see his maturation process as we go through the season as well. Ross, thanks so much for the time. Of course. Ross will also join us on our radio show at 4:35 every Thursday. But got about a minute for myself, and I'll give you a minute. Please tell the folks how they can follow you on social media and check out everything you're involved in. Yeah, absolutely. You can find the Locked On Saints podcast free and available wherever you get podcasts, and on YouTube. That includes our Saints Squad show as well, which features former New Orleans Saints wide receiver Lance Moore. You can also catch the Ultimate New Orleans Sports Show, myself and WWL Sports Director Doug Mouton on the WWL Plus app, and you can find all the written work over at LouisianaSports.net. Find it all in one place on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson Nola, NOLA. And thank you for being with us today here on the program. Certainly appreciate you joining us. Hey, real pleasure. Thanks for having me. All right, thanks so much for tuning in. So many ways to catch our program. There's a QR code on your screen that will take you to my website, ericasher.com, and also the WLAE-TV YouTube channel between WLAE-TV, Pelican Sports Television, WLAE-TV 2,
to the WLAE-TV YouTube channel. Again, so many ways to catch our program. Set your DVR. You'll never miss the show. You catch me on the radio 4 to 6 weekdays. That's 106.7 The Ticket. You can listen live at ericasher.com. Also, The Ticket has a website, 106.7 The Ticket. You can listen live at the iHeartRadio app, the TuneIn Radio app. The Ticket has our own app now, 106.7 The Ticket, which you can take with you anywhere and listen to the program and the station. And of course, as always, want to thank our underwriters who make the show possible. Please support the underwriters who support our program. That's how this program stays on the air. Please support those underwriters. And of course, special thanks to the folks here at WLE who do a great job producing our program each and every week. Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Alex Chacon, the best director on the planet, William Hill. For Ross Jackson, I'm Eric Asher. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. Thanks for watching.
Hey, I'm Keith Spiro from NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. My guest this week on Let's Talk is comic and comedy producer Matt Owens. Matt, are you a funny guy? Are you more funny when you're working as a comic or when you're like directing a show?
As a comic, I'm more funny.
Excellent. All right. Well, we'll hear all the secrets of the comedy world this week on Let's Talk.
Hello, I'm Norman Robinson. Join me every Tuesday night of the month at 9:30 for Affordable Housing Matters, a show developed to educate the viewers in the New Orleans metro area with step-by-step basics of home ownership. Every show, we will bring in leaders and representatives to discuss topics such as credit counseling, home buyer training, mortgage lending, property insurance, fair housing practices, and so much more. Again, that's Tuesday nights at 9:30, right here on WLAE.
We're local and educational.